We're talking real job solutions with my next guest. Her company's looking to put 11,000 Americans to work in a growing industry serving millions of Americans. And her ideas on job creation have even been complimented by the president. Give a listen.
She's creating thousands of call and sales jobs, bringing jobs back to the United States that have gone overseas in the last several years. And she had some very specific ideas about how we could foster more of this reverse job migration.
Our specialist today is the co-chairman of Arise Virtual Solutions, Angela Selden, and the mega panelist stuck around to ask her some questions. Thanks, Angela, for coming by today. So, I mean, you've got a presidential endorsement for your jobs ideas. What's your what are your? I know you've got several major ideas that you think could, via your business, help boost employment now in the U.S.
Well, one of the most important things we're seeing is that the million jobs that have left the shores of the United States in the last 10 years in the call center industry have remained offshore. And we suggested 2 years ago to endorse and incent the companies in the United States to bring those jobs back on shore. And one of the things we recognize that may be a perceived barrier is what the cost to do that might be. And what we've determined is that because it takes 2 or 3 phone calls typically to get your question answered by someone in India versus getting your question answered by someone in Indiana, which it might take 1 call to get answered, that actually neutralizes the overall cost advantage you might find because of the difference in the wage rates. So we're encouraging the administration to consider how to incent U.S. companies to bring those million jobs back on shore in the U.S.
And are those, before I get Susan, are those good jobs?
They're terrific jobs. What we're seeing, our business has grown 80% in the last 2 years since we had the good fortune of participating in that jobs forum. And what we find is that families want to stay in local communities. People want to have the flexibility to be able to work from their home or be able to work when they have the opportunity to, working around their family schedule.
And this is an at-home call center. These are people working at home.
Absolutely. And so if they have a young child or sick parents or what have you, they need flexibility. So what this opportunity offers them is the ability to construct their own work schedule and work how often and when they choose, and choose the different companies they provide service for. And so we have folks that will work 80 or 90 hours a week and can earn in the high $80,000 a year. So wow. It's very lucrative for folks.
Susan.
Fantastic. Angela, my question is that clip that we saw was from about 2 years ago, and the president mentioned some specific recommendations that he was going to consider and hopefully implement. Have they been implemented? It seems to me that a lot of people who are offering solutions aren't seeing and followed through on by the administration. I'm just curious if any of the things back then have come to fruition.
I think it's a great question, and I know that there were 150 executives at that meeting and lots of ideas that were being generated. We haven't seen specific action being taken on the ideas that we had offered up yet, but we know that what we are seeing is U.S. U.S. companies are actually embracing the notion of at-home work since our business has grown so much in the last 2 years.
So the private sector is embracing it, just not the government.
The private sector has been embracing it, yes. Okay. Thank you.
Jimmy Williams has got a question.
So I like what you're doing, and the idea, and listen, I was on the phone the other day for 2 hours with someone in India, and it really, to be honest with you, pissed me off. So here's my question.
But Jimmy, sometimes you're hard to understand, I'll have to confess, and I'm right here in New York.
You think I'm hard to understand? Hell, you had no clue what I was having to deal with, but that's another issue. But listen, here's my question. So you're creating American jobs, okay? But what I think most Americans want to know is why aren't we making things right here in America? So, I mean, you're in the business of call centers. Your clients are in the business of making products, I assume, mostly in China. Are you encouraging your clients, the people that you're actually establishing American call centers for, to actually bring jobs back here to make products, and then when something goes wrong or right with those products, then they call into your call centers in Indiana?
So it's a good question, and what we see is that businesses have to make profit and they have to make money, and so they're looking for the best, most economical way to actually build products and offer services. What we're saying is that by virtualizing the work, by being able to bring the work into the homes of the American people, what we see is a nearly 30% cost reduction, simply because, not because the wage rate has been reduced, but because we're able to variabilize the work, meaning that we can staff folks in 30-minute increments rather than having someone drive to a call center and work an 8-hour shift. And when many of those half-hour intervals, you may not be very busy, but you need to you're obligated to give someone full-time work opportunity. And so we find that rather than trying to expect a company to make an unprofitable decision, we actually find that this is a tremendously advantageous decision for a company to make because it has economic benefit in the range of about a 30% cost reduction for American companies.
Karen Finney's got a quick question.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a lot like it kind of builds on the idea of flex time in a lot of ways, or some of the same principles. Here's my question to you. We hear over and over again that regulations are a real barrier for job creators, such as yourself. So I guess my question is, in this industry, are there certain regulations that currently exist that would be helpful to have removed? Would that help make it easier for people to kind of explore this option? Or are there not regulations?
Well, to Susan's question earlier, which I think was a good one. What's standing in the way? What are the barriers? And that's the question you're asking as well. And the advantage we see to this kind of program is that there aren't barriers. We have a network of over 20,000 small businesses in the United States today who are able to provide for their families by doing this work. There's no barrier right now for them to be able to create their small business and be able to provide work to their family and to their business. And so we believe that the one thing that could be very interesting is for the administration to look at the social contract that has been created between traditional employees and employers and determine whether or not that social contract still makes sense. Today's American workers want flexibility, they want choice, they want the ability to work when they can and how often they can, and they may want to take their specialized skills and apply them to multiple companies rather than actually just simply doing work for one company. And many of the traditional labor laws that exist in the U.S. today are very much oriented around that very traditional labor relationship between an employer and an employee, and we think there's some possibilities to be able to open up some and take some fresh looks at ways that we can encourage more small business creation. We know there are about 550,000 small businesses created in 2010, and that is really one of the best places for us to get these 13 million folks that are unemployed back to work.
That's going to be grist for another segment at some point on how we can reform the labor law on independent contractors. Thank you, Angela Selden, the company's Arise Virtual Solutions. I know Jimmy is dissatisfied that you haven't solved the manufacturing crisis in America as well as employing 11,000 people. That wasn't enough for one year for Jimmy Williams. But thank you for joining me today. Thanks as always to the mega panel, who seems like that you've been here like mega amounts of time today. So that's Jimmy Williams, Karen Finney, Susan Del Percio. Thanks as always.